Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us, panelists. We're excited to have you with us. So we had a retreat. We had 4 different topics. You all have been working on these 4 different groups, and we're trying to get from you these salient points, these tight little things, and probably some action steps, some specific things that we can take back to our districts that would help us move this work forward. So that's our challenge. We're going to start with President Buckley on the workforce alignment side. So can you talk to us about why now is the right time for the Central Valley to move forward toward a more coordinated regional approach to talent and workforce alignment?
Thank you for that question, Brian. I think when you look at the magnitude of the potential productivity of all of our institutions of higher learning, from the community colleges to the CSUs and UCs, both in terms of their traditional programs and their extension programs, not to mention the privates, and let's not forget our K-12 partners as well, and all the dual enrollment that's taking place there. There's a lot of potential to basically provide either entry-level training or all the way up to and including graduate degree education for people that work in various sectors that impact the Central Valley. And if you think about agriculture in particular, currently we're producing about $8.8 billion in productivity in terms of product that's sold around the world. The potential is that, according to the McKinsey Group, we can actually raise that level to $10 billion in the next 2 years. So there's a lot of potential just in that one area to do more work. In fact, there's been an estimation that we'll need something like 2,000 more manufacturing technicians in the next 2 years because of the reshoring of manufacturing. How do you produce 2,000 of anything in terms of human potential in a matter of 2 years without basically pulling things together and actually working together like we have through strong workforce in the community college system? But what we've never done yet is actually work with our CSU and UC partners and the privates to see what can be done at scale. So in my sense of this, there's an opportunity with that reshoring of manufacturing alone to consider the need for this force multiplier by working together.
Very good. So a follow-up on that, as you reflect on the dialogue among community colleges, universities, industry partners, what has most encouraged you about the region's readiness and willingness to collaborate differently?
I get 2 in a row?
You get 2 in a row. We're hitting it.
Okay, well, I'm on a roll. I'll simply say that our experience collectively over the past 4 years with the K-16 collaborative shows that we can work together and we can actually do quite a bit of work to produce more prepared students for transfer into our CSUs and UCs. We're beginning to see the results of that. I know in my case, I can look down the hall from my office and see the number of young people that are now enrolled in my engineering program. And I do say I have a little pride there. But the point is, it's our team that's achieved this. I know our early college program is in the audience today. I know they've been doing magnificent work with our various K-12 partners like Sanger and Dinuba, others that have been producing these wonderful, better prepared students that we transfer on to Fresno State. So I know we have this experience in collaboration already. We simply need to build on that.
Well, thank you. Let's shift down to the end to President Jiménez-Sandoval. So as AI revolves rapidly, what policies or guardrails do you think are most urgent for higher education right now? And where would a shared regional framework be more effective than institution-by-institution approaches?
Yeah, I think what we need to do is we need to come up with a framework or a structure of what AI is and how AI is going to be applied within the classroom, and then also within the research aspect of it. Many of our faculty are very much invested in AI, but we have probably the majority of the faculty who are not really trained in AI or know what AI has the capability of doing within the classroom and within the research aspect of what they do. So within this, I think point 0 for me would be to really upskill the faculty as to the potential that AI represents for them to co-create in the classroom. That's the first step. And then the second step would be how do we then upskill to research beyond the classroom? So that, I think, coming together with CVHEC is, we know it's out there. We know that the genie's out of the bottle, but many of us were gathering together and saying, we don't really know how to go about upskilling. How do we do it? What is AI really going to do for the university so that we can say to our students, when you graduate from one of our institutions, you will graduate with a ready-made AI instinct that will then augment your chances of getting employed in your area of expertise. So I think for me, first and foremost is starting, like tabula rasa, right? The blank page is how do we all get together and say, these are the processes that I have at Fresno State that I'm following through in upskilling, number one, and then number two, in keeping track of everything AI that's happening at Fresno State. I know that Angel has a slide that I sent him, and if you can just show, this is sort of like a snapshot of what Fresno State is doing right now in terms of AI. And we're keeping track of it because what we want to do is we want to say, this is the research component of it, and how do we then come up with another pathway like this that illustrates clearly and concisely what is happening within the classroom as well, so that we come together, to your question, and we share best practices with each other. And we come together and we say, this is what I'm doing at Fresno State. What are you doing with Reedley? What are you doing with Clovis, et cetera, et cetera. And then from there, then we build this repository of knowledge that moves the region together in an intentional way.
Well, let's do a follow-up then. So many of our institutions are actually in earlier stages of AI adoption than you're showing here for Fresno State. I know my institution doesn't have that kind of a detailed matrix yet, for instance. So what will it take to move our institutions from these isolated pilots to institution-wide and scalable strategies, and where do you see the biggest barriers to getting that done in the next 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, I often speak about the potato, because the potato was, of course, developed in Peru, the Andean region of South America, and then the Spaniards take it back to Europe, and when they take it back to Europe, they look at the potato and they say, it looks like a rock. What do we do with this? I know it's nutritious, but then how is it prepared? It's the same analogy that's happening with AI right now, right? Once you uncover that the potato can be fried, it can be smashed, the possibility is endless. It can be dehydrated and then rehydrated later on. That really is what AI is at this point, right? It goes back to my previous answer to you. We need to come together with best possible solutions, best possible practices, so that I don't have to reinvent the wheel at Fresno State. I can actually learn from somebody else. And in turn, my professors, my staff can say, I'll give you an example of what we're doing with transcripts right now. We would receive hundreds and thousands of transcripts before, and we would have to go through each one of them individually to make sure that the A in biology in high school was the A that the student reported through their application online. That's intensive. Now, we have a program, AI-powered, that 96% accuracy. So what do? I have reshifted the focus of my staff into recruitment, into retention, into other areas that the university has. It's these types of directly applied processes that will be able then to be shared with the other institutions that will get us there.
Thank you. All right, let's shift down the line here to President Armstrong. So we're talking about enrollment and reconnect. And so we've talked about reconnect not solely as an enrollment effort, but as a broader system challenge. So from your perspective, what do you believe currently are the most significant barriers causing students in our region to stop out? And as a region, what would it take for us to truly approach these students as shared students rather than belonging to any one institution?
Thank you. My part is a little easier because we just heard from a student. She just walked us through all that she went through, both with the barriers at the institutional level as well as with the concerns in her own personal life. This is what we're seeing across our region. This is not something that's an anomaly. This is what we're seeing. So I want to present to you a little bit of data. It's going to be a little old, 2018. It was reported that 250,000 students in our valley alone, stopped out. I didn't say across the state, right here in our valley. One thing is, how are we defining stop out? I think some of us thought it was just that one time. She just told us it's multiple times. Our committee has formed a purpose, so we're not just winging this, and I want to read it to you. It says, to increase the overall strategic outreach and re-enrollment efforts of some college, no degree student population in the San Joaquin Valley at a regional level, augmenting of existing efforts at the individual institutional level. We all are doing things at our colleges and our universities to address this issue. But now it's time for us to really look at it because it does impact our region. As our students impact our pipeline, that does impact our workforce, our economic development, our ability to provide our employers with what they need. This is a system-wide approach and a system-wide issue. We have data and information at the institutional level of why we think they're stopping out. We're looking to increase that at the regional level. We're working together because it is about all of us. We heard earlier about the need for smooth transitioning between the community college to the four-year college. The student verified that there's some things we really do need to work on at the regional level. We can do that. There are some very nice programs that exist at the institutional level. You see Merced, you heard. She mentioned their program. It helped her to come back in. Bakersfield has a program to come back in. We at Clovis Community College have a Zero Momentum program that we just started 2 years ago working with Achieving the Dream. There are different points when people stop out. It's not always 10 years. Our goal at Clovis is to get them in that first semester when we realize they've stopped out that first semester. There are so many things that we as a region can get together and look at the data, look at what all of us are doing, and see how we can then approach that. Recognizing that we do know on an institutional level what those barriers are. When I gave you the information about 2018, old data, that did not take into effect COVID. We know we lost a lot of people during COVID, and currently looking at the issues with our federal government and immigration. How many are we losing? But we have the opportunity as a region to look at that information and then develop a system-wide process for it, not just looking at it as an institution. And while we're doing that, looking at not just getting them back in, understanding the whys they're leaving, the multiple whys that they're leaving, and prioritize and address what we can as a region to do this.
So I'm going to ask you a follow-up as well. So if this regional task force is successful, and we look back a year from now, what tangible outcomes would you like to see for students and for our institution and for the Central Valley as a whole?
Well, one thing that we're working on this year is that we've invited all of the PIOs from all the institutions across the region to come together and develop a regional marketing. We all do our own individual institutional marketing, but as the student said before, and as the panelists said also, to open us up, sometimes our students don't know the next steps between the community college and the four-year college, and the four-year college to the graduate programs. That's on us. We can make sure that we do that, and by having a regional campaign showing that we are not competing. We are all very much interested in our education of our region together. Having that one marketing effort is something we can do, and we are looking at doing that. Also, sharing of data. Yeah, we can work on that, especially as we're talking about transfer. These are things that we can do and that we're working together. I'm very proud of this region because, as was mentioned earlier, this is unique. And I'm going to challenge what was said. It's not just unique in California, it's unique across the country. Working together for the betterment of our region, for our students. So the marketing of it, the ability to find ways to actually share our data. So when a student goes from Clovis to Fresno or to Pacific or to Merced, they're not jumping through hoops, and we're not jumping through hoops trying to find the information. These are system-wide things that we can and are looking at doing. So those are the two things I want to mention.
Well, you teed me up there, teed Sean up. We're going to shift over to President Hancock and talk about data sharing and regional dashboards. And so, question for you, sir. We've talked for a long time about the importance of data sharing, just mentioned, across our institutions, and especially to better tell the story of the Central Valley. So what are some practical steps we could take in the next year or so to move this forward?
Thank you. So you hear each of my colleagues refer to data or talk about data points as we discuss all these other topics. And it's important to frame this conversation that data tells a story, and it can lead us towards the direction we need to go. It can help set a vision for that direction. It can also clarify the path or let us know how we're moving along through that journey. And it can also tell us whether or not we got there. And so all of those pieces there. But does anyone here feel like they don't have enough data? Right, exactly. We all have tons of data. We've moved past this we really need to use data and utilize data in our decision making. We all understand that. We do that daily. But oftentimes it's understanding those data points, the definitions of the data, and how does that translate across our different systems? The independent colleges and universities, the CSUs, the UCs, and the California community colleges all have their own dashboards and sources of data, and they don't talk to one another necessarily. And so, all the great work that is being done through CVHEC, Dr. Duran can talk about, he was giving us data points earlier this morning at our board of directors meeting. And he has to pull that from all these different sources to come up with the answer to those questions. And those questions are often asked, how well are we doing as a region, or asked by funders. And as we're applying for various grants, they want to know, what have you done, how successful have you been, or what data do you have that's driving this need to apply for this grant or to request these resources. So that right there sets the stage for we've got to have some way of collecting data that has the same definitions that we can all understand. It's apples to apples, oranges to oranges, instead of four disparate systems or resources. So one of the things that has been talked about, the task force has met once, and that's your research. Do we have researchers in here? Some, I know there's a few, yeah. So they're going to know how complicated this is going to be. But it has to do with, so what source are we going to use? And there's many efforts that are taking place throughout the state, nationally, the state, various counties, school systems have had these different ways of approaching. We need a shared database. Maybe just within their system or within their district. I know even within our own district, we're like, well, what does that data mean? Or that looks different for our college. And so that's where the complications exist. And so I think one of the things that the task force is talking about, rather than this big, it could take 3, 5, 10 years or more to build this database, this shared database that we're all feeding from each of our systems. Let's start initially for this first year and identify where can we pull data from that we all utilize. And one of the things that came up was the National Student Clearinghouse. And that's a vast majority. I think when I looked on their website, 91% of institutions or more feed into that. And so that would be a great starting point. and something that's being considered. Is like, let's identify a single source, and let's identify a problem that source can answer. And so one of those problems is like, where are our students moving throughout our region? Are we retaining our talent? Are they moving between the community colleges? And then are they going on to a four-year? Are they going on to a UC? Are they going to our independent colleges and universities? Are they leaving us? Are we losing the talent that we're building here to another region or state? So we need to understand that data. And so that's one of the initial guiding questions that they're also honing in on. So those are a couple of things over the first year is like, let's identify some questions that we want answers to, and then a single source that already exists that we don't have to spend the next 5 years figuring out how to build. So those would be the first steps in this year for success.
Well, those are first steps. That's great. And the fundamental change in how we share data would be fantastic. What are some of the barriers to us being able to share our data and making that possible?
Well, so first and foremost, there's always the sharing of data. Shared data use agreements, can be a little tricky. So making sure there are likely templates available. I know that some places, maybe the National Student Clearinghouse has a template for this, but so that everyone is clear and the data is safe and secure, and that we have the ability to share that between our institutions here as a region. So that will be one of the things that we need to flesh out. And then we've also got to make sure that the data that we're wanting to pull. Like I mentioned the apples to apples, oranges to oranges, and making sure the data definitions, data governance, all of those components, that's where the nitty and gritty with our researchers out there that really go deep dive into the weeds around what that data represents, because it can tell a different story based on how those elements are defined within those data points. And that's where it's like, well, what does that really mean? And who's included in that number? Who's not included in that number? Is that credit, non-credit, dual enrollment? I mean, I'm just touching on just a few. It can get very complex. And so I think those are some of the barriers and the things that we've got to get ahead of from the beginning.
Very good. Well, thank you very much. Well, I'm a curious kind of guy. So I got this little picture out of the binder, and I was looking at the pretty pictures, and we're also, as CEOs, we like to be prepared for what's coming. So we've been kind of working through some topics. We knew what we were going to talk about today. These guys don't know it yet, but I'm about to throw in their general direction some other questions that they may not have prepared. Grab whichever one seems interesting. Chime in as you feel drawn. Let's talk with kind of the workforce angle. So in the picture down here at the bottom of the section on workforce, it talks about agriculture and moving agriculture to something else. And so, Jerry, with your crystal ball, are we moving to something else away from agriculture? Is it a different aspect of agriculture? What is going to be the future of workforce in our overall CV region?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, Brian. I was just in conversation with one of our local growers who considers himself to be an agriculturalist, and he's willing to join Reedley with its interest in developing an Ag Innovation Center. His contribution will be providing a new generation greenhouse. It looks more like a spaceship than it does a greenhouse in the sense that it has airlocks, it has truly sterilized soil. The issue of using insecticides is irrelevant anymore because you have a clean room environment where you pretty much have vertical agriculture taking place. It's not your traditional field. So his intention is to educate our students and transfer them on with that basic context, that might be one of the future images of agriculture.
Great, Kim, you're grabbing a mic.
There it is. In addition to the traditional definition of agriculture, expanding it to ag industry. So we have been working collaboratively, regionally with our ag tech and our F3 programs. So Clovis is not what you would consider in a rural area. We're more suburban. But our contribution to the agricultural industry is our irrigation programs and also mechatronics, some of the kind of things that we can work on. And don't forget truck driving. All of these things are part of the whole system of agriculture. So there's room for all of us in this room to really work on the importance of agriculture in our region. And I do see it, as Dr. Buckley has said, as something that we're doing now that will absolutely continue to be a growing industry in our area.
Yeah, having grown up in a farm, I know that fundamentally speaking, you need two basic elements for ag. One is water, and the other one, of course, is labor. Both of these tenants right now are extremely scarce within the Central Valley. I think that's why I'm so pleased that Blake Sante is back there from the MADI, because the MADI has been developing an ag policy aspect to it. I think the future of the workforce in the Valley needs to incorporate in a very fundamental way policy. How is it that we appropriate water? How is it that we distribute water? And then what do we do about the labor shortage? What do we do, speaking of mechatronics and all of that, how do we automate certain processes in the farm so that the farm is not dependent on the human aspect of it, but is moving forward with machinery? And AI, of course, is fundamental to all of this. But I think to me, the fundamental question is going to be, what's going to happen to the water? In Fresno County alone, last year, we fallowed more than 200,000 acres because of the lack of water. And even though that happened, Fresno County came on top as a top producing ag county in the nation. So I think the nation is going to have a reckoning of what does food security mean to the discourse of national security. Because in the fundamental bottom line is going to be a nation that produces its own food is going to produce its own future in a secure way. If we are dependent on other countries for our food, Mexico, Chile, Peru, Brazil, South America, mostly, what will happen to our national security in that case? What happens to our national security if all of a sudden we go to the store and an apple costs as much as the Japanese are paying for an apple, or a melon costs more than $100 in Japan? So I think we have to concertedly come together and speak about the value of the Central Valley, not only to California as a state, but the nation as a whole. We collectively produce 25% of the nation's food supply right here. What does that mean to the future, fundamentally speaking?
Great responses. Thank you. Speaker privilege here. I would add also that in the North Valley, we're working on the biocircular economy and how to use the ag byproducts, the leftovers of the almonds for other purposes. To that end, I'm a very practical kind of guy, and so being delivered to my office today, I think, is a set of trash cans and some flower pots that are being made with 25% almond hulls, almond shells, ground up and incorporated in there to reduce the quantity of plastic that we're using and potentially at scale through the MJC nursery. Go ahead, Sean.
I was just going to add that I know Bakersfield College, one of my sister colleges, is working on agrivoltaics. And so some of the future is continuing with ag, but it's advanced ag, and implementing all of the new technologies available to yield, to create a better yield as scarcity and things of that nature continue. Specifically here in California with climate change, we've got to bring that into the conversation as well.
Very good. Very good. All right, I have another follow-up question. Should take us to the lunchtime. So we recognize lunch is coming, but I'm going to go back to what Dr. Jiménez was talking about with AI, and you very enthusiastically talk about the future of AI and how we need to change our systems and we need to train our students for the future. And I think that's a truth that we as CEOs all hold. But I'm getting comments from faculty, particularly at the middle and later parts of their career, that those comments are tone deaf to the reality that they're facing right now. While they might like to adopt AI technology for the future, they're just buried under the concept that they have to rethink how to deliver information. They have to rethink how to ensure that students are ingesting and digesting that information, and they have to completely rethink how they assess student learning. So what are some ways that we as CEOs can work with our faculty through that transition to help them not feel like we're just ignoring their really heartfelt pleading?
Yeah, I'm going to say that right now at Fresno State, we have 30% of our faculty who have fully and thoroughly adopted AI. 1/3, not 30%, 1/3. The other third is thinking about it, and then the other third says, I will never touch AI. So we need to become aware that this is the same demographic that happened back when the computer was adopted. And I know that Dr. Garcia, that Chancellor Garcia, said that when she was up here. When I came into my department in 2000, I was a young professor of Spanish and Portuguese back then. I had a computer. I still had faculty in my own department in the year 2000 who were using a typewriter. So that faculty is gone. They retired. The same thing is going to happen with AI. I think we need to become aware that AI is here to stay, and it is a tool. It is not going to replace human ingenuity. It is not going to replace human creativity. It is not going to replace the human soul that constitutes all of us. We need to teach our students to actually use this tool effectively. Why? Because if a student from Fresno State goes out into the workforce, and the student says to the employer, I know nothing about AI, where is the value of that degree of Fresno State going to land? So we collectively, with our faculty, have to let them know that the ship sailed a long time ago and that they have no other option other than to explore ways to incorporate and adopt AI into their lessons to co-create, number one. And number two, how do we grow within AI as scholars, as academics, as future professionals as well? So I think it is very important for the faculty to understand that the genie cannot be put back into the bottle. That's it. It's gone.
Yes, amen. I'd like to build on that magnificent recitation of information. I love the passion. I love the storytelling, too. I just want to say that at many of our colleges, I know this is a truth, and that is that we've seen the demand from employers. In fact, I serve on one of our system statewide committees, and what was said to us recently was that 70% of our employers currently have an expectation that we will graduate our students with some kind of AI certification, some competency. So it's not a future, it's a now. It's a requirement. So to meet that need locally, we've launched 4 different courses. We've had someone who has been part of the statewide academic senate, who has been very involved with the conversations of forward-looking faculty, looking at what is possible, what is necessary, and how to do it. So we're offering to our various comments across the day so far, the issue is upskilling the existing workforce. The mid-career professionals need to be competent, just as much as our current graduates leaving to go into the workforce for the first time. So we have to have a comprehensive plan, and I believe many of our colleges are beginning to get there. But I think it's also important that our senior partners have those degree programs where they can actually have not just mastery of how to use it, but more along the lines of how do you evolve it and control it and manage it.
All right, well, very good. We've now arrived at lunchtime. Thank you to the panelists. If we can have a round of applause for our panelists, please.